Good afternoon. Welcome to the City of Janesville April 2020 election training. My name is Dave Godek. I'm the City Clerk Treasurer for the City of Janesville. I appreciate those of you that are joining us via our live stream and those watching on JATV. Just to start with, we are going to provide a phone number for you to call if you want to ask questions. Derek will answer that phone. He'll write your question down. We won't address it right at the moment, but we'll save those till the end, and then we'll answer as many questions as possible. My hope is to keep this down to an hour to honor your time. So if you do want to call in with a question, that number is 608-247-3946. Again, 608-247-3946. So we'll get started. This is kind of our training agenda. We'll talk about the current election, and then we'll talk about what we're doing for safety precautions for COVID-19 and how we're going to try to improve safety for our election inspectors and for our general public that appears at the polling place on Tuesday. We'll talk a little bit about voter ID and review of other materials. So current election, there's a lot on this ballot. First of all, we've got the presidential preference. And for those of you that are longtime election inspectors, you'll remember that a voter can vote in either the Democratic or the Republican primary, but not both. And so if you see folks crossing over and voting in both primaries, you need to change up your instructions when you hand them a ballot. But also on this ballot, we have a Justice of the Supreme Court race. There's a race for Court of Appeals judge in District 4. County Board Supervisors are on this race. Janesville City Council is on this race, and you can vote for up to 3 in that election. Milton School District and Janesville School District are both on the ballot, depending upon where you live. So that northeast side of town, you've got the Milton School District. The Janesville School District, you can vote for up to 3. The Milton School District is to vote up to 2. And then there are 2 referenda questions on the ballot. This is a 2-sided ballot, so you want to make sure you tell folks as you hand them their ballot that it's a 2-sided ballot. The referenda questions are on the back of the ballot. Okay, remember, voters can only vote in one primary. We just talked about that. If you're getting lots of crossover votes, you got to reword your instructions to the voters. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but remember, voters only get 3 ballots. So if they're coming up to you a third time because they struck out on their first 2 ballots, have them use the express vote. It will not let them cross over. Ballot has county supervisor races, so we can't share ballots between polling places. Crossover ballots will be rejected by the machine, and I just mentioned this, voters can be issued up to 3 ballots. If the absentee ballot is, if the ballot's an absentee ballot, our folks in central count will have to remake that ballot for crossovers without voting for president. You'll have to skip that race. All right, so at the end of the night, we're going to need 3 tapes for this election, with the exception of what's traditionally New Life Assembly of God. We'll need 4 tapes, but the machines are programmed to print 4 tapes for everybody. Please sign all 4 tapes and bring them to us. And this is a long tape. Make sure you're watching your tape, that it's printing out correctly, and that you don't run out of tape. You can always pause on the DS200, the printing, switch your tape roll, and continue printing. Because Derek's least favorite thing in the world is when we have to photocopy tapes so that we can have enough copies for everybody. It's really, really difficult. Remember, voting in tally slips. A white ballot gets a white tally slip, a yellow ballot gets a yellow tally slip, a pink ballot gets a pink tally slip, a green ballot gets a green tally slip. Remember, ballots have only stripes at this point. It's a stripe at the top of the ballot that indicates the color. And I've said it for numerous elections now, and I'll say it again. I'll continue to try and get us colored ballots, but it's not looking too good. I've not gotten any traction on that so far. All right, now we're going to talk about COVID-19. I know that this is something that is very concerning to the community as a whole, It's certainly concerning to me when it comes to voting. We have been encouraging at the state level, the county level, and the city level that people vote absentee in this election. And I can tell you, based on the activity in my office for the last 2 weeks, people are listening. As of yesterday, we've processed and issued over 10,500 absentee ballots, and 9,700 of those or so have been by mail. For some perspective, in April of 2016, when we had this same election, we issued 2,450 absentee ballots, and 942 of those were by mail. So we've had a surge of absentee ballots. With that said, I don't expect there to be a large turnout at the polls. However, we still have to have that option available for people. And so there will be people that still appear at the polls. We have to allow them to vote. But part of what we have to do is ensure the safety of you, our poll workers, and our election inspectors to the best of our ability. We're gonna have a special guest with us today. It's Captain McManus from the fire department. I'm gonna go over some very broad strokes of some of the safety things that we're going to implement for this election, and he's gonna provide you more detail because I'm just not qualified to talk about those things and to give you good information. Captain McManus is. So he's graciously agreed to be here. So I would really ask that you pay close attention at this point in the presentation, because the other stuff is gonna be very, very routine. This is the stuff that is different and what we need you to pay attention to for your own safety. So here are the following steps that we're taking to protect our election inspectors and the public who are coming to vote at the polls. First of all, we're condensing down to 4 polling places. Mount Calvary Church, Faith Lutheran Church, and the Job Center are all going to be voting at the Job Center for this election. Church of Latter-day Saints, New Life Assembly of God, St. Mark's Lutheran Church, and First Lutheran Church, Blaine Supply, are all going to vote at the Sears building at the mall. And the reason that we made that decision was, if you look at those 5 polling places, LDS, New Life, St. Mark's, First Lutheran, and Blaine's, and added all their square footage up, we'd get about 36,000 square feet. The Sears building is 65,000 square feet. That gives us an extra 30,000 square feet to create social distancing so that we don't have people crammed in and packed together if we do have big lines. All election inspectors, we're gonna ask you to self-check prior to reporting on April 7th. And so what self-check means is when you get up in the morning, we want you to take your temperature. If you've got a temperature greater than 100 degrees or a subjective fever, meaning your body temperature runs a little bit different than average, and so you would have what you consider a fever. If you have a new or worsening cough, new or worsening shortness of breath, a sore throat or sore muscles, we're gonna ask you to not work on election day because we're not sure that you're gonna be healthy and we don't wanna spread anything. Just give us a call at City Hall. We'll let the chief inspector know that you're not gonna be there. Secondarily though, upon reporting to the polling place, we're gonna ask the chief inspectors to do the same thing with you. We're gonna issue them thermometers, they're gonna take your temperature, make sure that you don't have a fever, that they're gonna ask you questions, and if they don't think that you're in a position to work, they're going to send you home. Again, this isn't to insult anybody, this is an effort to protect the entire community. We're gonna provide election inspectors with face shields and gloves. And each voter, we have purchased 10,000 pens so that each voter can be issued a pen that they can use throughout the entire voting process, and they can either take it home with them or throw it away when they're done. We're not gonna reuse them, we're not gonna save them. That's, again, to prevent spread the best that we can. Social distancing marks are gonna be placed on the floor of the polling places. Every 6 feet we'll have an X. That's where we want people to stand, right? Chief inspectors, the thing that's gonna be key for you is that you enforce that social distancing, right? If you see people who aren't maintaining that 6-foot spread, you need to walk around and tell them, You need to be 6 feet apart. Polling places are all going to be laid out prior to your arrival. Tomorrow, I'm going out to Sears to lay that one out. Friday, we're going to the job center. We've already laid out City Hall, and we'll lay out the library probably on Monday, because we want to have proper social distancing of all of our equipment. So when you show up on Election Day, what you're going to need to do is turn on your machines and get your stuff set up like your poll books, but please don't move things. There's going to be huge spaces between polling booths in this election. We know that. We want them 6 feet apart. Again, that's an effort to protect you and to protect the public. We're going to have hand sanitizer available, and hand wash stations will also be available. So as people enter the polling place, they can wash their hands, go through the process of voting, and as they leave, they can wash their hands again. So I encourage people to use that. One of the things I want to talk about is signing the poll books. And I'm sure that our seasoned election inspectors remember that from previous trainings, that election inspectors have the authority to exempt somebody from signing the poll book. So for example, the example I've used in previous elections is I walk in and I had a skiing accident, both of my arms are broken and in slings. I can say my name, show you my ID, and you can say I'm exempt from signing the poll book. And all you have to do in that situation is write where the voter would normally sign, exempt. What I am going to tell you to do is exempt everybody who comes in. That's what I would like to see you do. I think given the current state of affairs, the requirement that you have to be in possession of the poll book, for your safety and the safety of the public, we need to exempt people from doing that. I've had that discussion with Captain McManus as our safety officer in our emergency operations center. He believes that's the best thing that we can do. We have a provision that allows for it, so let's take advantage of that. We're gonna start a public information campaign beginning tomorrow, asking the public to wear non-standard masks to shorten what's called their spray distance, right? So a non-standard mask looks like this. It's just a cloth mask, and they would put it on and tie it like this, right? And that shortens the spray distance I have when I'm talking, so it's a little bit safer. It's not going to protect the individual from particulates in the air, but it's gonna shorten that radius. So with 6 feet of social distancing, it's gonna help protect everybody in the polling place. Not everybody's gonna have the ability to get one of these, but if they've got them or they have something that they can use, a scarf, a bandana, something, we're gonna ask them to do that. So that's just one more thing that we're gonna do to try and ensure your safety and your protection. Voters exhibiting signs of illness are gonna be told to vote via curbside voting. We are gonna provide you signs to put out at the front door that say if you're experiencing a fever, new or worsening shortness of breath, new or worsening cough, all the things I listed earlier, we don't want you coming in. We don't want people being exposed to that. Go back to your car and you can curbside vote. And when we have curbside voting, as you know, 2 election inspectors need to go out there. What we want you to do is approach the car from upwind if possible, meaning you're not in the direction the wind's blowing. The wind would be blowing to your back, right? You get within 6 feet of the car and you say to the person in the car, roll your window down an inch, right? And you've got your gloves on and you've got your face shield on and you're gonna walk over and you're gonna slide the ballot through that 1 inch space. And they're gonna mark their ballot and they're gonna slide it back to you. Once you get back into the polling place, wash your hands. Joanne, and just so everybody at home knows, I did ask 3 people to come here, so as I talk about these things, if there's something that doesn't make sense, I'll be able to read it on their faces, and I'm reading on Joanne's face a question, so.
Photo ID from the person in the car.
Photo ID from the person in the car, great point. They can hold the ID up to the window with the window closed, and you can look at their photo ID. So step one would be, I guess, tell them, leave your window up, put your photo ID next to it, you go over and examine it, take your step back so you're socially distanced again, say, please roll your window down an inch, slide the ballot in. Thank you, Joanne. All right, once an hour, we need to go through and we need to wipe down booths and tables. And we're gonna provide you spray sanitizer and toweling to do that. So again, you wanna have your gloves on, you wanna wash those surfaces down. Once you're done, you wanna take the gloves off, throw them away, go wash your hands, make sure that you're clean. And when we talk about combining polling places, we're still gonna set Sears up, for example, sort of based on what your normal polling place is. So the west side entrance of Sears is gonna have First Lutheran and St. Mark's and the LDS Church. And so each chief inspector there kind of take a third of that area and be in charge of it. Then on the south side, we'll have Blaine Supply and we'll have New Life Assembly of God. So you're each gonna wanna kind of take half of the room and be in charge of it. We've got poll workers coming, and I can tell you that it's gonna be a challenge as far as we're gonna have a lot of new faces, right? We've had 60 plus poll workers who have specifically said, I don't feel comfortable working this election because of COVID-19. And I totally understand that, and I don't want anybody to do anything they don't feel comfortable with. And so we're supplementing them with new volunteers, and we've had a great response from the community of people volunteering, but they're new. So your chief inspectors, you're gonna need to work with them, right? You're gonna need to make sure they feel comfortable, because even though they're sitting through this training and watching this training now, it's no replacement for actually doing stuff. Now at this point, I'm gonna take a step back. I'm gonna turn it over to Captain McManus so he can kind of talk about some of this PPE. Thanks, Captain.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. I can tell you that the EOC and the safety group has worked really hard to try and find the best path forward for a good working environment for everyone and for the voters. I'm gonna go kind of chronologically. Dave already hit a lot about what we're gonna do, but I'll get a little deeper into it. The first thing is the self-survey and the survey that the chief inspector is going to conduct. That is our first line of defense for preventing coworkers from infecting one another. So that self-survey, be self-critical in the morning. Sometime this weekend, go find your thermometer, make sure it has a battery, make sure it's ready to go. Don't be scrambling on Tuesday morning or Monday night and figuring out you have a problem. I can tell you that the shelves are bare for new thermometers. The EOC has working very hard to acquire or borrow thermometers for this task. And so your home thermometer, make sure you know where it is, make sure it works. Be very self-critical when you think about, how am I feeling? Am I coughing all the time? Ask, if you live with your spouse, ask them, am I coughing all the time? And have them be sincere with you. Staying home is not a bad thing. Staying home is the thing that's going to keep everyone safe. Chief inspectors, in the morning, your assessment list should mirror your roster for workers. Everybody that's coming to work in your polling place should be listed. We have a very simple form that we're going to make sure we get to you. And it's the very same form we use every morning at the firehouse to check our employees in and out. So, that being said, the reason that's so important, and I'll get to the mask, and Dave alluded to it. So we are calling this a cloth non-standard mask. What do we mean by non-standard? It's that it meets no standard. So as healthcare workers, when we are dealing with the ill public, we are using what's called an N95 mask, which filters out 95% of all particles. That is the standard for healthcare dealing with known sick people. When we are dealing with those sick people, we are putting a surgical mask on them. And that surgical mask, if there was a standard, looking at this mask made out of looks like a very nice cotton cloth. That surgical mask doesn't filter out as much as the N95, and it has we're expecting about 3 times the capability to keep small particles away from the wearer than a non-standard mask. So the non-standard mask really has its greatest value for the person that's working, that isn't feverish, doesn't have a persistent cough, but may actually be infected and not know it yet, and preventing them from getting droplets out into the work environment. That's why we're going with this. It's the best we can do for all of you who are not in healthcare, but are going to be dealing with the public. Okay? The next layer is this face shield. And if I hold it up, you're going to say, well, gee whiz, Captain McManus, I can't even see through that thing. These masks are made in Janesville by Prent. We are using them at the firehouse as well. I'll put that there for a moment. And it has a large protective film over it that is just great. The best way before you start working for the day is to fit it to yourself. It's got can we do a close-up? Or we could even go that, I don't know. Where would you like to go? I can see. Okay. It's got a triangular tab, and I fit right there. So fit the foam blocks up to your head, kind of put your thumb where it belongs. And it works best if you kind of slide it in from the side of the point and then roll it into the tab. And then usually when you do that, that'll get the peel going for you. And then you'll find that it is remarkably clear once you get going. These can get cleaned. They can be disinfected. If a patron were to sneeze right on you, they can get cleaned. Voter, patron, whatever we call them. Okay, so that is my assembled face shield. So you would like to get good fitment on your cloth mask. Of course, I'm doing this one-handed. If you wear glasses, these are just my safety glasses, but if you wear prescription glasses, a good trick is to get the crown of the bridge of the glasses over the top of the mask. These don't have a wire in them, so if you can hold them in place with your glasses, sometimes that helps with fogging. And then your face shield will go over like this. All right? the objective here, especially for people with the responsibility of comparing books and working right next to each other, you're the ones I'm thinking of the most, is if you're required to examine those books and manage those books, this is what's you're basically, it's the same as the bit of plastic you're seeing at the grocery store right now, okay? Because we need you to work together to do your jobs, this is the separation we're creating for you, okay? Then, last but not least, gloves. And I brought some gloves. Where should I go, sir? Okay. So putting gloves on is pretty natural. I'd just like to review, though, possibly the best thing we have going on here with the mask and the gloves. If you were ever a subconscious finger licker before you turn the page, this is going to solve that. So working with your gloves, taking licenses, giving ballot tickets out, and then taking ballot tickets and giving ballots out. Or if you are transporting that ballot from outside that drive up into the ballot reader, we're going to want you to have gloves on. But when it's time to take a break, go use the restroom, change jobs, whatever you need to do, we're going to take these off by pinching the glove and then pinching it again, and now they're inside out. You can dispose of them accordingly, okay? Those are the finer points that I wanted to hit. The last bit is social distancing. The masks, the shields, everything we're doing is the best we can do right now. But even with it, we need to enforce social distancing in the polling places amongst everyone working together, with that fine exception of the people working the books together. But the same goes for the voters coming in. It's very, very important for their health and for your health as workers to really enforce that. I think that's all I have for you, Dave.
Captain McManus, thank you very much. It was very helpful and certainly hit on the details. And I would just reinforce to everybody that the thing that we're most concerned about going into this election is making sure that we've put procedures in place to protect you as poll workers. I cannot wait until we get back to a sense of normalcy within our city and within our country, and we can have a regular election again, and I can have everybody in this room with me, and we can talk about training for a partisan primary like we normally do. Hopefully some of our new volunteers will find that even under these difficult conditions, they find this really fascinating and fun, and we'll be able to get a positive out of this from recruiting some new poll workers. That would be a great win for us, but a bigger win for me is that a month from now, I'm not hearing that any of our poll workers got ill because of the election. You know, it's a solemn thing that we do, and you've heard me say it before in these trainings. My office does a lot of stuff. I think the most important thing that we do is elections. And it is all of you that make that possible. We would not hold elections in this city if not for our election inspectors. And so as the city clerk, I take your safety very, very seriously. And if you're at a polling place and you're asking people to socially distance and they aren't doing it, you need to let me know. And we will dispatch folks from JPD to come out and take care of that. If people are just not cooperating, we'll find people they will cooperate with. So,
May I interject for just a moment?
absolutely, please, go ahead.
So just remember though, a husband and wife, a parent and an adult child out voting together, they're certainly welcome to stand next to one another, right? If you're living in a household with somebody, that is, that certainly will provide that's within the bounds of social distancing. But if they could then, when they get to that second to last spot, if they can walk up one at a time and take care of business, that would be great.
Thank you. So now we're going to talk about voter identification. Voters are required to show identification in order to vote. That is not changing for this election. That still has to happen. We have that exhaustive list of acceptable forms of voter ID. It's a handout. They still have to do it. The voter still has to say it, show it, and sign it, right? They still have to state their name and address. They still have to show their photo identification. They're supposed to sign the book. I'm telling you right now, you should exempt everybody from doing that, right? So then you just put in there exempt.
The chief inspector or the person?
The poll worker that's sitting there, that's working the books, should just write exempt, right? Because any poll worker can order an exemption. All right, so we want to continue to do that. We want to exempt people from signing the book. We're not worried about red ink. If you can use a red ink pen to do tally slips, that's great. Chief inspectors, I would really encourage you to give each of your workers a single-use pen for the day, right? That's not just for the voters. As you're doing your check of the folks as they're coming in, hand them their pen for the day. And be like my mom when I was a kid. I got one crayon and I couldn't lose that crayon or else I didn't get another crayon to color outside the lines in. You need to look at the photo identification and determine if the photo reasonably resembles the person and if the ID on the list is acceptable. Now again, if we have people coming in with cloth masks like this, right? It could be a challenge to see what they look like. It's okay for that second to have them drop the mask to here and then pull it back up. That's all right. Captain, you don't have a problem with that. So, tell them to hold their breath for that second it takes you to make that comparison. Remember, driver's license and Wisconsin ID cards can be expired, but it has to be after November 6th of 2018. What if a voter doesn't have photo ID? They should return home and get their photo ID. They may vote provisionally. If they want to vote provisionally, get your chief inspector, and chief inspectors can go through that process, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. The big thing, especially for our new folks who are watching the training, is you don't necessarily want to vote provisionally. It is quite a hassle. It's a lot more work than generally driving home and getting your photo ID. Confidential voters are exempt from the photo ID requirement. They simply need to show their confidential ID card that's issued by my office. They don't need to state their name or their address. They still have to be exempted from signing the book because they still have to sign the book. Currently, as of right now, today, we don't have any confidential voters in the city of Janesville. Doesn't mean that won't change over the next 5 days, but right now we don't have any. All right, before the polling place opens, somebody has to go outside and say, hear ye, the polls are now open. Set up your express vote. Position the machine to protect privacy. And that's gonna be a bit of a challenge in this election for Sears and for the Job Center. And one of the things that we're gonna do is folks are still gonna vote basically based on their ward. So they're still gonna have to go to the right express vote. They're gonna have to go to the right DS200 to put their machines. So it's gonna be important when you're looking at those machines, and we'll send signage out that says, wards 17 and 18, ballots. right? For Joanne, it would be wards 23, 24, 25, and your super busy ward of 26. Those are the things that we're gonna have to do. It's gonna be a little bit different. Again, I don't expect, you're not gonna have lines out the door. If we have lines out the door, I'm gonna be shocked, and we're gonna have a problem with ballots because we've already had 10,000 people vote. We went through our supply of regular absentee ballots about a week and a half ago. So we're gonna have bigger issues. But if you have that issue, let me know. Plug your machine in. One of the things I wanna remind everybody is as you're lifting these things, the express vote is not nearly as heavy as the auto mark. And I got nothing but good feedback after the February election when we first used it. And even when I was out at some polling places and talking to voters about it, they enjoyed using it. I know when I went to vote, I asked for an express vote ballot, and the person that was handing out ballots was looking at me funny and was like, well, you can have a ballot for Ward 25, that's where you vote. And I'm like, but I want to vote on the machine. And they're like, oh, okay. So it was a little bit different. We all learned some stuff, but I voted on that, no problem. It was really slick. We are gonna send alcohol wipes out to all the polling places. Do not spray disinfectant on the express vote. Use the alcohol wipes we're sending you. You will destroy the machine, and we just bought them. I want them to continue to last. But when you're setting those machines up, same with the DS200, we don't want to see people doing this and bending over at the hips and picking those things up, right? I don't want to see anybody get COVID-19, but I really don't want to see anybody herniate a disc in their back either. You know, make sure you're using good lifting techniques, that you're squatting down and you're picking up and you're lifting with your legs. And there's nothing wrong with having multiple people pick those machines up. They've got handles on both sides. Take advantage of that. You gotta plug your machines in, power them up, verify the seal numbers that we have on your inspector statement. Make sure your ballot boxes are empty. Make sure your machines have a 0 count. They should all have a 0 count. When we test machines, our intention is to take them back to 0. I can tell you, we had an election where we missed a machine because we're human, we make mistakes. And it wasn't until we came and did that first call at 8 o'clock and said, where are you guys at for votes? And the chief inspector looked and said, oh, we're off by 52. You've been open for an hour. What do you mean you're off by 52? Well, the machine says we have 102 votes, but we only have 50 tally slips issued. Well, they didn't notice that their zero tape didn't run a zero tape. And so we had to go out, zero everything out, and run those first 50 ballots again. Fortunately, we caught it at 8 o'clock in the morning. You know, that's one of the good things about doing those hourly checks to make sure you balance. But it is really, could have been a big issue if we had waited till 7 or 8 o'clock at night to look the first time. So make sure that your machine is zeroed out. Okay, you're not gonna need to worry about setting up your voting booths because they're gonna be set up for you. Make sure there's nothing in there that they don't need to be wiped down as far as, you know, somebody wrote something in them. Set up your check-in table with tally slips, poll lists. Person issuing tally slips records the first and last number that they issued. Check your atomic clocks for the official times. Particularly in Sears, this is a building that's been vacant for a while. It's in nice shape, but a lot of our polling places have clocks on the wall. There's not anything really on the walls in Sears at this point. Post your required notices. So we're gonna do this a little bit differently for the job center and for Sears, right? You're gonna have, at Sears, we'll have 2 triple crowns, 1 for each entrance, And I told Derek we only needed 4, but Derek, we need 5. Derek loves setting up the Triple Crown, so you can't see him, he's not on camera, but he's looking at me and shaking his head. But the Triple Crowns at Sears and the Job Center will not have your ballots in them because you're not gonna have the normal 4 wards or 2 wards that you have. You're gonna have multiple wards, so you're gonna have to tape those up on the walls. All right, so do your best to have them taped in some semblance of order that looks nice and professional, but we understand that's gonna be a problem. For City Hall, for the library, your Triple Crowns will be set up just like normal. We're no longer gonna give you chief inspectors the Triple Crowns on Saturdays when you come pick your other stuff up. We've decided that we'll just take those out, set them up, bring them back. But make sure that you have all of your notices on there. And again, the 2 sample ballots per ward, and I know that seems silly, but what I would suggest is do a front and a back, particularly since it's a 2-page ballot this time. Absentee voting, and the county treasurer has told some of the other clerks that this training is being watched by folks outside the city of Janesville, which is perfectly fine and we're great with. Central count is specific to the city of Janesville, so if you're in a township, you're probably not gonna be caring about this a whole lot. We're still gonna do central count. Typically we do that here at City Hall. We're not gonna do it this time. We need a bigger space, given the fact that we're gonna have probably close to 10,000 ballots to process. So we're gonna be doing that at Parker High School. So you go in the student entrance, and we're gonna be in that main foyer right there. It's a huge area. We're gonna have plenty of space. We're gonna be able to provide good social distancing for the election inspectors that are there. And hopefully the ballots are gonna come to you in alphabetical order. Key thing for the polls is if you get a ballot, and you guys are very good at this, but if you get a ballot, you need to call us and let us know so that we can come pick that ballot up and take it to central count. And that's gonna be a little bit more of a challenge for us logistically than it normally is, because somebody can just run out, and when they come back to City Hall, we walk it upstairs. We're not gonna have that option to this time. So if we have to go out to Sears, we're gonna have to go then out to Parker to drop that ballot off. But first, we have to stop at City Hall to check it in. So there's an additional step there for us. So the sooner you can tell us about those ballots, the better you will be. All right, election inspectors, make sure you initial the ballot, hand it to the voter, explain the ballot to the voter, explain to them to complete the oval next to the candidate of their choice, but most importantly, they can vote in either the Republican or the Democratic primary. They can't vote in both. And you will have somebody that said, I got to do it last time. You guys know that. No, they didn't. They just are misremembering. You can assist the voters if requested. Now again, normally if we assist voters, you're getting in pretty close contact with them. So really take those PPE precautions that Captain McManus was talking about seriously at that point, because you could be dealing with somebody that's asymptomatic. Privacy folders are available if the voter wants them, and make sure you secure all your marked and unmarked ballots. Nothing new there. Voter makes a mistake on the ballot. They can sign the supplemental inspector statement for an additional ballot. You issue a new ballot to the voter. They get a maximum of 3. It's just like baseball. 3rd strike, you're out. You don't get to vote. So if they're coming back to you, spoiling their 2nd ballot, that 3rd ballot, give them an express vote ballot. Remember, with the express vote, you need to walk over with them, pick the ward that they're voting in, and then let them go. And then it's easy from there. Don't let them pick their ward, because if they've already misvoted twice, I don't know how much confidence we have that they'll pick the correct ward. Provisional voting can only be used in 3 situations. A voter registered by mail and is marked POR required, and they do not have proof of residence. We don't have any of those in the city of Janesville, so that's out. The voter is an election day registration and is unable or unwilling to provide their driver's license number, or the voter does not have an acceptable photo ID. Again, turn that over to the chief inspector. We've got a whole process that they can follow and a checklist they can follow and walk the voter through that. Okay, registrations, remember you've got confidential information. We also have a much better registration form. We registered a lot of people in February. I was actually surprised at the number of registrations we had in February. And I am really happy to say that everybody did a really nice job with those. We didn't have the weird errors that we typically seem to have. And I don't recall that we took any insurance cards for proof of residence. You guys did a nice job and I'm real proud of you. So keep that up. Residency requirements, 10 days in the city of Janesville, which is March 28th. Let's get their previous address listed on the form if they've got it, or at least as much of it as they remember, and their acceptable proof of residence. And the nice thing about that form now is it tells you what's acceptable and you can just circle it. New voter has to be a United States citizen. They have to be 18 or older on election day. They have to be a resident for 10 days, again, March 28th, and they have to have the right to vote. So one of the things that you want to do is check that ineligible voter list every time you're registering somebody. That's not an optional thing. You want to check that. Use your street listing to determine ward. Again, look up the street. Is the address even or odd? And never ever send someone away without double checking. Of course, in this election, it could be interesting. You know, if you've got somebody that's at the LDS line and you're like, no, you belong in Blaine's Supply. They're only walking, you know, a couple hundred feet to send them back, so it won't be necessarily as big a hassle, but double check with somebody. It's a good habit to be in. Make sure the voter completes the registration form. We do have labels again. We made sure to order our labels just like we have in the past. Despite all of the absentee ballots, Derek came and looking out for you guys, made sure to put a sticky note on my computer that said order registration labels. And he put it right on the screen, so it was impossible for me to ignore. And so I remembered to do that. And so those came in, so you've got registration labels if you need them. Make sure the voter signs the form in front of you. Some people will take the initiative to complete the form at home, print it off, sign it, and bring it in. We don't need them to redo the form, just have them sign it a second time in front of you. You're gonna record the proof of residence, the entity type, the issuing entity, and the number, and then you sign the form. See the checklist for acceptable forms of proof of residence. Wisconsin driver's license or ID number are required if they've been issued, they're current and valid. There's no exceptions unless somebody's gonna vote provisionally. If they have not been issued a current and valid driver's license or ID, then they can use their last four of their social security number, but it's not an either or. They don't have to show you their driver's license. If they know the number, they can write it down. They can call home and say, hey, I left my driver's license on the counter, read me the number, and they can put it down. Some acceptable proofs of residence, a Wisconsin driver's license or an ID, but they have to be valid. This isn't like proof of residence, right? It can't be expired for 2 years. A government document or a check, a current utility bill, which would be gas, electric, water, telephone, cell phone, cable, satellite TV, a bank statement, payroll check with the voter's address, employer issued ID with the voter's address, and the state has expanded their interpretation of what is acceptable. So a mortgage statement is acceptable now. It used to not be. Residential lease that has an effective date on a registration, it is effective on the date of registration. Record the last 4 digits on the sheet if the full number is more than 6 digits, and only record the last 2 digits if the full number is 6 or fewer digits. Always record the full driver's license number. That gives us something to compare to in case the voter transposes a number. For a homeless individual, an affidavit on public or private social service agency letterhead is acceptable proof of residence. And people can now use their smartphone to pull up their bank statement and show you that, right? That was a change a couple of years ago. If you've got questions, call us. That's why I have somebody here from 6 o'clock in the morning until the very last chief inspector checks out with me at the end of the day. We're here to answer your questions. So we don't want to send people away if we can avoid it. Call us, we can hopefully work you through if you're having an issue. At the end of the night, somebody has to go outside and say, hear ye, the polls are now closed. Polls close at 8 p.m. sharp, but anybody in line gets to vote. If you have a line, use a line monitor. Particularly if we're doing, lines where we've got 6 feet of social distancing, that line could extend really long. There might not be a lot of people in it, but it could extend outside the doors, right? So you want to have a line monitor for this election. For those of you in the townships, you need to make sure all your absentee ballots have been processed, right? In the city of Janesville, that won't be a concern because all will be at central count. Print your total tapes, sign your total tapes, announce results if you have observers. I can tell you that the Associated Press has contacted me and they intend to have people to gather results at City Hall for Ward 3 and at Sears for Wards 27 and 28. And I believe it's for Ward 21. So you will have people there looking for results, and there will be people at central count looking for results, right? You're gonna announce the results, they're gonna get those, and they're gonna leave. And they've assured me that they're going to abide by social distancing and that they're gonna try and not be in your way. I don't expect them to be there all night. I expect they'll probably show up around 7:45. Place your total tapes in the blue security bag. That says turn off the auto mark. That was, can tell I reuse these, and I failed to update that to express vote. My apologies. But turn off your express vote, take out your sticks, put those in the security bag. Same thing with the DS200. Place your thumb drives in the security bags. Review ballots for registered write-in candidates. I can tell you again that as of right now, today, we have no registered write-ins. So that is not a concern. If that comes up in the next several days, we will let you know. Record write-ins on both your return sheets, complete your return sheets, explain any discrepancies in the voter counts, and place completed registration forms in the suitcase. Don't put your completed registration forms in the ballot bags with the ballots, because what happens is we don't find those, and then 3 days later, we have to go dig through all the ballots in the county and try and find those registration forms. Sign all of your required documents, seal ballots in plastic bags, lock the bags in the ballot bin. Chief inspectors return everything to City Hall. We'll continue to meet in the same room that we have for years. And everybody should leave together after all your tasks are completed. We don't want anybody leaving at night by themselves. For this election, you probably don't need to arrive until 6:30 because your polling place is going to be set up as far as tables, chairs, booths, that sort of thing. Try and park away from the door. There's no electioneering within 100 feet of the polling place entrance. You certainly, if you have that, can try to stop it. If you need to give us a call, we'll come out and work with that also. I don't expect that's going to be an issue in this election. With that, Derek, have we gotten any questions? We've got a couple questions, so let's see what those are.
First one's kind of duplicate, but.
Okay. All right, so the first question is, what are the hours for central count, the location for central count, and the basic duties for central count? Central count hours, again, we want you to arrive at 6:30. We'll start counting ballots right at 7 o'clock, and we'll go until we're done. I'm hoping that'll be sooner rather than later. I've got a list of city employees that are basically on call to be poll workers for this election, And so if we need to station them at central count, we will. Either Derek or I will be out there first thing in the morning to help with the setup of how to move through things. The basic duties for central count are to look at each envelope, make sure that it has the appropriate signatures, open the envelope, pull the ballot out, assign a tally slip number, and then run that ballot through the machine. That's it in a nutshell. That's how central count works. One of the issues with central count is if a ballot rejects and you have to remake it. Hopefully that won't happen very often, and our intention is to put an express vote out there to remake ballots, because the express vote ballots go through the machine dramatically quicker than the regular ballots. And I think I said this, but just in case, location for central count is going to be Parker High School. Our sign's going to be placed at the moved polling places. So yes, we're going to put signs up at all of the polling places that have been moved saying, this is where you vote now. I'm also contemplating how we'll handle that person that shows up at, New Life Assembly of God 5 minutes to 8 and finds out, oh, I'm not at the right spot. Because you have to be at the polling place by 8 o'clock. So I've been having some discussions with the county clerk about that and how we'll handle that. We'll go through those, and when we make a decision on that, or if we're gonna do something differently, I'll communicate that down to the chief inspectors. How should we answer the following question? Will this be my new polling location? The simple answer is no. This is not your new polling location. We did this in response to COVID-19 to try and ensure the safety and security of the community and of the election inspectors. And our expectation at this point is that come August, you're gonna have back at your regular polling place. If we do have to move things in August again, we would certainly communicate that like we normally do. Somebody else just called, Derek, but they didn't ask a question. So there's no questions in here about anything else. So with that, again, I want to thank everybody for agreeing to be a poll worker, particularly at this time. I want you to remember the most important thing is to protect yourself. And one of the things that I would encourage you to do is something that I've heard Chief Rhodes, who's our incident commander on this, is we're in a different normal today. And everybody's kind of on edge, so let's just show each other some grace. And now Jerry has a question. Go ahead, Jerry.
With respect to the polling places that are combined at Sears and City Janesville, or Job Center, will there be one registration table for the entire site, or will it be by polling place?
Jerry asked, are we going to have one registration table for each site, Sears and the Job Center? The way I envision that is Sears would probably have two. There'd be one at the west entrance, which would have First Lutheran and St. Mark's and LDS Church. And so you'd have a few people there, and as you're registering people, you would tell them, oh, you're in Ward 17, that's where you want to go. Oh, you're in Ward 14, this is where you want to go. At the Job Center, I think we would probably just have one. I don't think it's as big, but we can look at that, and we might need to have two there too. And if we find that's not working, at either Sears or the Job Center, I'm laying this out in my mind based on the size of the room and what I expect for voter turnout. Doesn't mean we can't adjust it during the day. The thing I don't want to do is start collapsing polling booths next to each other with that social distancing. But if we have to make other moves, we're going to be able to do that. And we can certainly talk about that if you call me up and have that question. So with that, I want to thank everybody. If you do have questions or concerns, feel free to call 755-3073. That's our election line. I look forward to a good election on Tuesday, and I know that, like you guys always have as our election inspectors, you're going to rise to the challenge for this one too. So thank you. Have a great day.